You know what's fascinating? Studies show that 82% of Americans believe in some form of spiritual experience. Yet most of us struggle to define what authentic spirituality actually looks like in practice.
That's really interesting because it highlights this gap between belief and experience. What exactly are we talking about when we discuss authentic spirituality?
Well, think of it like this: traditional mysticism suggests something quite different from what most people imagine. Instead of esoteric practices or secret knowledge, it's more like a garden growing naturally in the sunlight.
Hmm, that's an intriguing metaphor. How does that actually work in practice?
You see, just like a plant doesn't force itself to grow but naturally responds to sunlight, authentic spiritual growth isn't about striving or following rigid rules. Historical mystics like Teresa of Avila actually wrote extensively about this organic nature of spiritual development.
That really challenges our modern productivity focused mindset, doesn't it?
Exactly right. And you know what's particularly fascinating? Research in neuropsychology now shows that forced behavioral changes often don't last, while transformations that happen organically through positive experiences tend to create lasting neural pathways.
So it's like the difference between cramming for an exam versus actually learning to love a subject naturally over time.
Yes. And this understanding completely transforms how we view spiritual growth. Instead of measuring progress by external metrics, we're looking at internal transformation, like how a flower doesn't measure its petals but simply opens to the sun.
And that's such a powerful shift in perspective. But what about when things get difficult? When the metaphorical weather isn't so sunny?
Well, that's where this understanding becomes even more valuable. Traditional mystical writings actually suggest that challenges and mistakes aren't failures. They're essential parts of growth. Just like how moderate stress actually strengthens a plant's root system.
That reminds me of recent studies in resilient psychology that show how facing difficulties can actually enhance personal growth.
Precisely. And here's what's really fascinating: historical mystical traditions have been teaching this for centuries. The 14th century classic, The Cloud of Unknowing, describes how spiritual growth often happens most profoundly in times of uncertainty.
That's really remarkable ancient wisdom, aligning with modern psychological insights.
And you know what makes this especially relevant today? In our age of constant digital connection and information overload, this approach offers something fundamentally different: not more knowledge to acquire, but a deeper way of being present.
That really speaks to our current cultural moment, doesn't it? We're drowning in information but starving for genuine experience.
Exactly, and recent studies show that contemplative practices actually help reduce anxiety and increase well being. It's not about escaping reality, but engaging with it more fully.
So, how does someone actually begin to apply these insights in daily life?
Well, traditional mystics suggest starting with simple awareness, like a plant turning toward the sun. We begin by simply noticing the divine presence in ordinary moments. Modern contemplative teachers like Thomas Keating have developed practical approaches that make these ancient insights accessible today.
That makes it sound much more approachable than most people might expect.
Yes, and that's really the heart of it. Authentic spirituality isn't about achieving some elevated state. It's about opening ourselves to what's already present, just as a garden naturally responds to sunlight and rain.
This whole conversation really changes how I think about spiritual growth and development.
And that's exactly why this matters so much today. In a world that's constantly pushing us to do more, achieve more, be more, this ancient wisdom reminds us that true transformation happens not through forcing change, but through opening ourselves to what's already there.